Welcome, everyone. I want to thank you all for being here today. I want to thank our sponsors, the Bronx Community College Library and Bronx Community College, for providing us with the Zoom platform that we are using to broadcast this event. And of course, I want to thank Dr. Marlene Gaynair for accepting my invitation to have a conversation here today for the benefit of our students here at Bronx Community College and the overall Bronco community. I forgot to mention, I am Nelson Santana. I am Assistant Professor, Deputy Chief and Collection Development Librarian here at Bronx Community College Library. So today's event, titled "The Conversation with Dr. Marlene Gaynair, Diasporic Caribbean Connections," is part of a Bronx Community College's month-long celebration of Black History Month. When planning my first event for the BCC Library, the first scholar to come to mind is Dr. Gaynair. I met Dr. Gaynair in 2014 when we were both doctoral students in history at Rutgers University. We immediately clicked. There is something special about Dr. Gaynair as a person and as a scholar that is difficult to describe. But what I can tell you is that she is real, she is humane, she is caring. And sometimes these are attributes that academics sort of lose sight of at times. Dr. Gaynair knows who she is, she knows where she comes from, and I truly believe that she serves as an excellent model after whom students, scholars, and all sorts of people can emulate. Many of our BCC students can and will identify with Dr. Gaynair's own personal story, and I hope you enjoy today's conversation. Dr. Marlene Gaynair, Ph.D., is a cultural and social historian of the Black Atlantic, with a particular focus on North America and the English-speaking Caribbean during the 20th century. At present time, she is the William Lyon Mackenzie King Postdoctoral Fellow, Canada Program at Harvard University. However, later this fall, she will start a tenure-track position at Washington State University in Seattle. Dr. Gaynair's work focuses on the African diaspora, Atlantic world, and African American history. Her research examines the social and cultural histories of the Jamaican diaspora in the 20th century. As I noted earlier, Dr. Gaynair obtained her PhD from the Department of History at Rutgers University, New Brunswick. During today's event, I will ask Dr. Gaynair a set of questions and we will have a conversation. After a certain point, we will open the floor to questions from the audience. Dr. Gaynair, thank you very much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Wow, I gotta update my CV now. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for showing up today. Thank you to Professor Nelson Santana for the invitation, and thanks to Bronx Community College for setting up this wonderful event, especially this month. Pretty much my research is very diasporic, and it comes from my own, I believe, identity. Yeah, my own identity and lived experience as a Canadian born in Toronto of Jamaican parentage, of Jamaican ethnicity. And so I remember growing up in Canada, I really couldn't see myself in terms of Canadian history or Canadian society in terms of what was on TV or what was written in the books. So I feel a lot of people in my situation, maybe first or second generation, we tend to look back to our parents' home, back to Jamaica or the Caribbean, or we look to the closest Black experience, which would be in the United States. And I think in particular for people that come from Caribbean descent, our closest connection would be New York City, especially if you're from the Anglo-Caribbean or the Spanish Caribbean. New York City, in similar ways, is like Toronto in terms of having large Caribbean populations, large and significant Caribbean cultures. And there's a lot of exchange and movement between both cities. pretty much to kind of fill in the gap or the absence of what we didn't have back in the day. And to this day, you know, the difference between New York City and Toronto is that the majority of Black people, or the Black experience in Canada, and particularly in Toronto, is a Jamaican experience. Jamaicans are the majority of the Black population in Canada. How many? I think there's 2 or 3% of the population. If there are almost 40 million Canadians, we are 2 or 3% of that, which there's a saying that, you know, Black people are like a fly in a bucket of milk, or a pail of milk, in terms of demographics. So, I mean, I guess the best example would be Drake, if people are familiar with this unknown rapper. He's of African American and Jewish descent, but a lot of his identity is very West Indian, or particularly Jamaican based, because that's the largest influence, demographically, culturally, everything, you know. If you hear someone say wagwan or things like that, it's not Toronto slang, but, you know, this is Jamaican vernacular. It's not broken English, it means something. But when we look at diaspora, part of my argument or my research demonstrates that I think a lot of us will know, if you're part of this culture, the local influences shape our language, our identities, our culture, our experience. A Jamaican living in Toronto will be different from a Jamaican living in New York, Boston, Atlanta, Miami, and even Jamaica itself. Same with, you know, we look at the Dominican community in New York, which is the largest, I believe the largest Latino or largest Spanish speaking demographic in New York City right now. And when we look at New York, you know, we're including Westchester, New Jersey, definitely. I believe Perth Amboy is like a huge, large diasporic community. When we think about New York City, you can't leave out the Dominican influence, right? Like a lot of what we know as popular culture that transcends language or the experience has to come from the Dominican experience, you know? So I think part of the issue when we don't see these things, we might know them because we grow up, this is our language, our lived experience, but it's not necessarily known outside of our communities, which is part of the erasure of the importance of our cultures on cities, on the histories. So yeah, I believe that's part of what pushes me towards this research, to bring our histories, our knowledge, our influences to the center of these conversations, move us from the margins to the forefront of when we talk about New York history, when we talk about American history.
Thank you so much for that amazing introduction. And you are part of this sort of wave of scholars like Dr. Loria Garcia Peña, Dr. Melissa Castillo Planas, who their lived experiences, what they've the specific events, their environment that have shaped their lives, they bring it into their scholarship. And there are times in graduate school, for example, when some students are told, no, you need to be far removed away from your scholarship, right? And there are folks who do not study, you know, they become disillusioned with the process, and they change topics. They study maybe another group, they change their topic completely. And yet, you know, we have people like the individuals that I just mentioned and yourself who basically continued with your research, you know, and it's just amazing. sometimes you have people from other cultures, and I'm not saying there's necessarily anything wrong with someone else writing about someone else's culture, but I do believe that there is a unique experience, a unique perspective that someone from their own culture brings that just cannot be captured by someone who's not part of that culture. Please correct me if I am wrong, and what do you have to say about that?
I think just in our experience too, as academics, I feel like either you study what is familiar with you or you study something completely different. And the best advice I received was from my mentor in Toronto. She's like, Marlene, whatever you do, you better like it, because you're gonna be stuck doing it for a good long time. So it took me about 7 years to finish my doctorate. And I was studying before that, so it's been almost 10 years. I'm still interested because I'm studying myself, but also trying to understand how, it helps me understand myself better, but also understand the world around me. I think the type of work that we do, you can relate to this, is especially for a discipline like history, which seems to be very traditional, one of the particular disciplines where if it's not written down, it's not history, or it's not a valid source. If it has to be in the archive, it has to be written in the book. But when you look, even for myself, if we were to look at books about the Caribbean experience in New York, it feels like a kind of recent thing to see books being published, although we've been around for over a century, right? Very visibly as well. So for my work, particularly when I looked at Canadian studies, there wasn't much there. It was like Black people showed up during slavery and left, yada, yada, yada. We showed up in the 70s. Like, what happened? What else happened, So a lot of my work had to be non-traditional or very creative to create these stories. I use digital sources, like I very much use social media to glean the history, because it's more, I feel like it's accessible. Anyone can contribute to these things. So it's a very living history. Also, I looked at a lot of newspapers. I think that's my favorite. So you have a very written, like it's there in print, like it's tangible, you can't get rid of it. It's there. We love newspapers. It doesn't necessarily represent everyone, but you kind of get a piece of whatever was happening in society at that time. And of course, I love interviews. We have to talk. We have to talk to the elders. We have to talk to people in the community before, we lose those stories, we lose them. And when we can get that record, those oral histories, if we can save them digitally or put them in libraries so everyone can access them, we keep our lives, we keep living, we save things for the next generation. So that's the type of work I'm doing. Of course, it's not brand new, but I'm helping to contribute to that dialogue. The next thing for me, of course, is learning another language, being able to read in another language. Shout out to Duolingo, so that I can glean more. If you're just English speaking, you only have like a little piece of the story, especially when you're talking about large cities where there's so many people and languages. You're talking about the Caribbean, which is literally like 5 different places. You have the US Caribbean, Anglo-Caribbean, Spanish Caribbean, Dutch Caribbean.
French Caribbean, I think you mentioned.
French Caribbean, my bad. French Caribbean, am I forgetting it? Yeah, I think that's about 5. So like, you have to think outside the box. But once you put these stories together, you're gonna have a wonderful history that hasn't been in the archives, but it validates our experiences as well. This is stuff we know,
right?
Generationally, we know this, but it's like, how can we prove it? We're kind of gaslighted, like it doesn't exist if it's not in a particular way. But yeah, that's the kind of work we're doing, so I love it.
That's awesome. Fantastic. Thank you. Um, um, can you talk about your current position as the William Lyon Mackenzie King Postdoctoral Fellow, Canada program at Harvard? And are you working on any particular projects or even the courses that you're teaching at this point?
Okay, cool. So I'm in the office right now. Please forgive me. I try to put a couple things in the back so it doesn't look so crazy, but so I should put this up so it looks like, giving representation. So William Lyon Mackenzie King was one of the longest, I can't think of the word, but he was prime minister for the longest period in Canadian history, over 21 years. So unlike the United States where you have a limit of 2 terms, Canada's like, whatever, extended. So he was a friend of the Rockefellers. I'm gonna believe Nelson Rockefeller. And he's a historian as well. He went to University of Toronto, then Harvard, then Oxford, and then became prime minister. So in 1967, which was Canada's centennial, at least in terms of colonization, like Canada obviously existed longer than 100 years, but Nelson Rockefeller Jr. created an endowment in his name. And I think William Lyon Mackenzie King would be very surprised to see me representing, but I think this is reparations. Let's just, I'm very appreciative that I could be in this fellowship and continue the type of work in terms of making Canadian history, creating a more well-rounded or more complete history of Canadians who can be considered a Canadian, migration histories, urban histories, cultural histories. So currently I am very in love with Harvard libraries. You can find books here that you would never think would be in a library. I think like the first Bible is here somewhere. I haven't touched it or seen it, but I assume it's somewhere here. I am working on my digital project, Islands in the North. So I'm working with librarians to create more mapping to extend it. Right now, I'm mapping Black Toronto, but I want to move on to other islands, smaller communities. Like we're talking about New York, I'd want to look at the Bronx and not the obvious Crown Heights in Brooklyn. Like when you think about New York, there's too many people to have one particular neighborhood, like the Bronx and Queens are very diverse, lots of different people that have been there a long time. And then you're getting different communities as well with the gentrification and things like that. Yeah, so that's one thing. And I'm also working on athletics in terms of Jamaican sprinters and utilizing American scholarships in order to come to the country, to utilize the resources here that are not as accessible in the Caribbean, and to work on turning my dissertation into a book manuscript. Yeah, so if anyone has any ideas or suggestions for a title, I would appreciate it. Put it in the chat or email me. Yes, so yeah. Trying to get all this done this year.
This is awesome. Thank you so much. There are quite a few scholars, who do diaspora and are also into sports. So yeah, I mean, this is great. You mentioned Island in the North. Now, similar to you, I started my own digital project, that's Sendom. which is an online website that documents the Dominican migrant community through oral history, photographs, articles, and other digital content. In your case, you founded the Islands in the North project. For those who are not familiar with this project, can you please explain Islands in the North as well as its significance and the intervention it is making or hopes to make?
So great question. So this project started, let's say like 7 years ago. So when I was doing my master's project at York University, which is in Toronto, I had done so much research, which mainly consisted of me spending a good month in the library looking through microfilm. For Gen Z out there, it's like a roll of film that has pictures, and you have to, let's hope you never have to experience it. So microfilm, which takes forever. And I was looking through decades of microfilm of community newspapers in Toronto. So for instance, there's one called Share, which was the Caribbean newspaper for Canada. And you had a lot of stories that focused on our community that you wouldn't see in the mainstream newspapers like the Toronto Star, the Globe and Mail. So I had all of this extra stuff that I didn't use, and I'm thinking, this is great stuff from the 60s and 70s, the articles, the pictures, the advertisements. What can I do with this? So I wanted to create this accessible and emancipatory archive, this digital archive that anyone can see and use without having to go through these barriers of going through a library or something like that. So I created this timeline on my website that people could click through and see the photographs, some of which I found from other people who contributed, but also using the public library that had a digital archive of photographs, which was really cool. I just put in keywords like Black, like very simple, Black people, Jamaica, Jamaican, and all of these things came up. Then I'm thinking, how would this help me? When you're doing history or a particular discipline, it's one thing to read about it, but it's necessary for you to see. Like, it's one thing to see, okay, this is at this location, but it's like, how does that relate in terms of the geography of the city? Like, where was it? Is there a lot of people that live around this location? Is it outside of the downtown core? Is it on a major road? Things like that. So I took the addresses I found of certain places from the newspaper or interviews or conversations and created a map. So now if you go and see the map, you can click on it, see the date which I found it in the newspaper or when it opened, a little description of it and things like that. So on one hand, it helped me think clearly about my historical subjects. And it also created a way for other people to use it as a source to think about what Toronto looks like in terms of a Black geography. And to compare it to today, a lot of these places do not exist through gentrification and construction. So it's literally something like you're looking back in time almost, but it's a way to keep the history living, existing in 2022.
Wow, thank you.
My map is still under construction, but what I will do is put what I can online later today. The map is done, but I need to create descriptions. I need to write down what you're supposed to do, what you should be looking for when you use the map, you know? So I will put it online for y'all today though.
Awesome, no, thank you. You are a professionally trained historian who is grounded in historiography and historical analysis, for example, and yet you also embrace other modes of scholarship and activities, such as digital humanities, public and public intellectualism. In what ways do these methodologies or modes inform one another in your work?
Well, similar to you, I want to, again, like with my project and just having these type of conversations at different places, in the community or in, a school, I want to share my work. I want to share my experiences with people. So, our work isn't stuck in the ivory tower in the school where only a certain percentage of us can experience these truths. I know for a lot of us, we didn't necessarily learn about ourselves during public high school. We didn't see our histories, or if we did, it was written in a negative way, in a dehumanizing type of way, maybe not even in our own language. So you shouldn't have to wait until college to learn and experience these things. That's why I like using technology, digital spaces to create these things where if you have Wi-Fi, then you can join in these conversations. Like even with Zoom, we can have a conversation. I'm in Cambridge, you're in the Bronx, there's some people all over, and yet, we're a community here. We've created a community of conversation. So it ends up being public because we are providing context to the things. It also becomes a collaborative experience because we want to crowdsource. We want people to also be involved in the work. Because if you're doing something about social society, communities, you need the participation of the community or else it doesn't work, So my methods are very much, I try to use what we have. You see, so especially if you're talking about a diaspora. Back in the day, if you wanted to call home, you needed the phone cards. Okay, maybe there might be a public phone in the town. You gotta line up on a Sunday or whatever. If people are asking, yo, you have to go to the Cambio, you have to go to Western Union, you know what I'm saying? Then you had the phone cards, which are like 5 cents a minute. You have to talk quick before it runs out. You can't end the conversation or the credit runs out, like now we have internet, people have smartphones. We can use the WhatsApp, send a chat. We can use Facebook Messenger, and we have our own language and culture when you're using Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. So these are living experiences here. Why not use them? You're speaking to the people, you're talking to the people. So yeah, that's my popular method for sure.
No, this is awesome. You actually, you answered several questions there. Thank you. No, I mean, it's
my bad.
No, not at all. We think alike. I certainly definitely understand. You mentioned my projects. For those unaware, Essendome is basically, we use it to document the Dominican experience, etc. And we recently just got an NEH ALA grant. What is it? I forgot the name of it. Professor Emma Antabana Kutsi, who's here as well. She's part of the grant writing process, and and I agree. It's we can produce the scholarship, but again, it will only reach certain people for whatever the reason. It'll only reach a select group of people. But through this particular grant, we're actually going to take the work that we've been doing on Essendome, which is journalistic work, and we interview people, the oral histories, etc. We take photographs, and
Yes.
We're going to create an exhibit based on that. We're going to focus on the activism work that we've actually covered, and rather than it just becoming a scholarly article that only a select few will read, the goal here is to create this online exhibition, similar to your project, right? So this digital humanities project that will become accessible to people. And you touched upon something else. Jamaicans and Dominicans were very much similar, and other Caribbeans and people throughout the world, migrants, right? And I remember, my parents, there was a point where, they could use a phone call or they had to send letters, right? And that's how people would communicate. Today, you have it at your fingertips. You have this, you have a phone. And now you can, if you have internet, if you have free Wi-Fi or whatever, you have access to Wi-Fi, you just connected to the world, you get your news, you get, and sometimes you have people in very remote places who get information much quicker than maybe you or me, for example, right? They'll get it. Whereas before it used to be, we used to get it before, but now everyone, has access to that, for example. So no, it's just amazing. And thank you for highlighting that aspect of your scholarship. Now, I do not want to make a complete, we're going to go back.
What I was just thinking about when you just mentioned that. So, us in Dome, you're basically the eyes on the street as well. Things that aren't covered by the New York Post or anything like that, you're gonna cover it so people can hear. And I think, especially with smartphones and technology, sometimes you're getting breaking news before the newspaper is even printed. Like I've seen accidents, car crashes, crazy things that have been forwarded on WhatsApp well before it's reported in the Jamaican newspapers, almost to like a detriment. Sometimes you don't want to see some of these things, but you know what I mean? Like these stories, even with activism, things that might have been crushed by law enforcement or the powers that be, you're able to utilize social media, you're able to utilize these things to really push the message, hashtags and whatever. So with your project, it can't be forgotten because it's there, and you're highlighting the people who are doing the work every day, but might not get the recognition or attention. So yeah, that's really dope.
Oh, thank you. Wow, very kind. Coming means a lot coming from you. So thank you. We're going to circle back to Jamaican migrants and your research, but before going there, I don't think I will do any justice, especially to our BCC students. In 2017, you penned an article titled "Learning While Black, I Was Streamed to Fail." Many of our students, staff, and faculty here at Bronx Community College and the overall City University of New York community can relate to your personal experience. If you do not mind, can you please walk us through that negative interaction that you had with a guidance counselor during high school who had no interest in guiding you, was dismissive of your work, and told you that trade school was the best route for you? Disclaimer, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with trade school, just to be clear.
Right, so I'm not gonna age myself, I'm an old head though, but in Ontario at the time, there were 13 grades. So the 13th grade was like a grade to prepare you to go into university, which is what we call college in Canada. And then community college is like Bronx Community College. So if you were to go into community college directly, then you could just finish in grade 12. So I went to a public high school in East Toronto, which had a problematic reputation. I don't know why, but I mean, I do know why, but I'm not gonna. Either way, it was really, for me, I had a really difficult time because I wanted to learn, I wanted to excel, but a lot of the teachers and even the administrators were white in a school that had a significant population of Black students, Southeast Asians, so when you looked at the level in high school, you had the advanced level, which was a track to put you through university. And then you had general, which was a track to take you to community college, which also included, trades or whatever. So, you can learn engineering, tool and die, anything basically. So you started to notice that students that looked like me were streamed automatically to general. There was really no conversation about your options. You know, it just seemed that choice was eliminated. And you were streamed, and you were also made to feel as though you were inferior or insignificant to those who were taking calculus or advanced sciences and things like that within the same school. So I remember in grade 12 now, you're supposed to start planning to graduate. And everyone who looked like me, we all had, there was like 5 guidance counselors that you were assigned based on your surname alphabetically. And I started to see my friends coming out of the office in tears or really devastated. And I'm like, what's going on? And then my term came, and I knew in terms of going to university, I just needed an English credit, an advanced English credit. But they had you believing that you needed all of these advanced STEM courses without even speaking to the student and finding out what their strengths were or what they wanted to do. It was just, everyone was in a particular box. So I had the guidance counselor, and I'll say his name, Mr. Fernando, was very disrespectful, dehumanizing, patronizing, looked at me and said, yeah, you're going to community college. I'm like, to do what though? Oh, I don't know. I'm like, so you're not even gonna look at my transcript? He looks, he's like, oh, you're on the honor roll. And I'm like, why are you giving me bad advice so I could end up like you? Don't. I got in trouble for that, but it was worth it. I just didn't understand why. Like, if you give me a reason, you know, give me some guidance. And it was just like, he wanted us to feel as terrible as he did. And I know having that type of someone in a particular position telling me that I'm nothing or didn't care about my future, I'm looking at the entire school as being against me or not caring about me. And that led to me dropping out of high school, because I just felt, if this guy is a guidance counselor and he thinks I don't have a future, then why bother? I'm wasting my time. I mean, I was in school, but I didn't go to class, let's say that. So after, I remember I took a year off or so, and I went traveling and I was working, and I'm seeing all the people in my high school moving on, and I just felt, what am I gonna do? And someone recommended college, so Seneca College, and it changed my life. It made me feel seen. I felt recognized. There were smaller classes. I was on a first name basis with the professors. They listened, you know, they encouraged me. And that's what really gave me that love for education again. I saw that there was a path. And yeah, you know, you might have a lot of people that see you as nothing or insignificant. You don't have a future, that you're streamed to fail. And you gotta have a strong circle of friends, of loved ones. If you don't have the family to do that, create a family for yourself. Find that one mentor or professor that believes in you, like that, you know, Dr. Santana here, and it makes such a difference. Just know that you're not alone. This happens to a lot of us, and you can change that trajectory, that future for yourself. Whatever happened in high school, you know, that's high school. Use this space to reinvent yourself and to change change your future, change your presence. So yeah, I'm an advocate for community college. It's the bomb. I love it. There's so many more options. It can be a very great space for you, a community, right? And yeah, take advantage of it. Don't let anyone make you feel insignificant, inferior, nothing. You're here, you made it. Obviously, you're smart enough to be in school. Keep it going, keep it moving, and you'll be all right. You'll be proud of yourself more than anything.
Thank you for that lovely message. I'm seeing here from, in the chat, people are definitely in agreement. I'm sure that many of the folks here have experienced these types of situations, microaggressions, and that is just so important to build that community, to have mentors, have people that you can speak with, right? Because I know doing a doctoral degree, I mean, just to be clear, I do not have a doctoral degree, just want to be clear about that, I do not. But it is definitely a very difficult time in people's lives. I mean, people get divorced, a lot of things happen. There's no need to talk about
pandemic,
yes.
parallelogram that we're in.
Agreed.
We have to pretend this doesn't have an effect on our education, being able to concentrate and focus. Like, we don't have lives outside of school. Like, the rest of our lives haven't continued to go. Being a parent, being a person, like, this isn't it. This isn't our life right here.
Well, thank you for saying that. No, for a lot of people, this is the only life that they know, and they ignore everything else and do not take care of their mental health, your physical being, so.
Getting that Pell Grant so you could pay rent, much less attend school. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that message. I mean, I have a few more questions, but however, I want to open it up to the audience. And if people are shy and there are no questions, then I'll continue. But do any of our audience members have any questions? You can either type them onto the chat, or you can communicate verbally if you'd like, if you're able to. Or people can raise their hands if they want. Okay, I see Professor Emma Antibonikitsi raising her hand. Would you? Yes.
Hello.
Hi, thanks, Nelson. And hi, Dr. Gaynair. It's so nice to hear this message from you, and this opportunity to have this conversation with you is, much needed. And, I'm loving, everything that you're sharing with us today, particularly your personal experience, which like Professor Santana mentioned, many of us, I think, can relate to experiencing something similar that was traumatic, for those of us who went through schools that, pushed traditionally like white hegemonic education norms on all of us. My question, finally, it's I loved how you gave this synopsis of the way, like, people just kind of think, okay, so enslaved Africans were brought here, did all the work, freed, left, and then just showed up in the 70s. And I thought, like, yeah, that's really kind of, you may learn about Reconstruction, but that doesn't put us in a good light either, continue to be taken advantage of. So, with the way that digital spaces are providing that option for us to speak our stories, learn more about our histories, in contribution to this nation as well as Canada, I find that those spaces are still on the margins of formal education, and particularly at colleges that are that are considered top colleges, and then that also affects not just the way we teach students, but then also the experiences that faculty of color end up going through, especially while doing like the tenure process. So I guess my question is, what do you suggest, or do you have any tips or techniques for us to take information from those digital spaces and bring it into formal education and kind of make it something that's normalized within formal education in our classrooms?
Right.
Or, what we discuss, in those spaces, in those digital spaces, how to translate that to working with students more compassionately, whether it's in the classroom or not.
Wow, great question. For me, I like to utilize what we have and what the students have on hand. So sometimes I'm teaching and automatically, we have our phones in our hands. So I was teaching a writing class, which is notorious at Rutgers as being the worst possible thing. Everyone has to take it in their first semester. And the reputation, like if you Google expos or expository writing, you see like the trauma from these students who, whether you're in STEM or whatever, you have to take it. And it's basically about being able to read different essays or texts and being able to critically analyze them and write about them in a way to prepare you for other classes and years of education. I don't know how long it will take, but right? So I would go through a passage with the student, and if someone did not know the meaning of a word, I'd be like, you guys might as well use your phones and Google the answer. You have your phones in your hands. And students were happy to do so, like it's right there. And I'm like, what does Google say? So as opposed to the student having to come up with this answer on their own, you're able to use these tools and contribute with my permission so that we're all on the same page here. And I also use it too. Of course, because I'm an old head, sometimes I'm like, how can I make this relatable or make a connection between the text to something we are all familiar with? So one of the passages was talking about TV shows, and it mentioned To Catch a Predator. So some of us may know what that. I'm like, all right, let's see what YouTube says. And then I showed them a clip. They're like, how is this in a book? I'm like, see, like, you gotta research. If you don't know something, don't be afraid. Like, let's research. Let's use the tools available to us, because I know y'all are not going to the library. They're like, oh, okay. But I also teach them how to search. How do you use the library's database to find ProQuest? Sometimes the websites that we use that are supposed to be educational are very hard to use, but we're expecting students to automatically know. One of my other classes, just to wrap this up, it was an online course in popular music and US history. So normally, if I'm not sure what BCC uses, but at the time we used Canvas. What's the platform that y'all use there?
Blackboard.
What?
Blackboard.
Blackboard, yeah, Blackboard. So you have like a discussion space for everyone to contribute. So I'm like, my class, we're gonna use Twitter. Everyone create a Twitter account so we can have these discussions. Now there's a certain character count. So you have to be concise to make sure you have a good argument. And if you need to do more, I can teach you how to do threads. Now remember everyone, this is a public account. So we have to use good tactics, aware of if you're using something in a public sphere, whatever you use on the internet is there forever. So you want to make sure you have good practices. You don't want this to haunt you in the future when you're getting a job or anything. And it also allowed people, you know, using memes, using videos. If we're talking about a song, get the song from YouTube, put it in the message. Use a meme. If you think something is fire or whatever, you know, use a, use a meme or like, subscribe, retweet. But it also allowed us to engage with each other in a way that some of us are, most of us are familiar with. If you don't know, we're also teaching you good online practices, which is very important. So I felt that was more, I guess, educational, but also entertainment that you couldn't necessarily utilize in Blackboard or Canvas or whatever the module is. So I feel I try to use tools that are free, accessible online, but also educate, making sure that we, that I teach people, like, this is what you should do carefully, this is what you shouldn't do. And it just makes things a little bit more, I guess, diverse, mix it up. If it doesn't work, you'll know in the, what do you call them? The reviews, what do we get at the end of the semester?
Evaluation?
Evaluations,
Okay.
yeah. If you read them, but yeah, so I try to incorporate different things. And like, give whatever works for you, you tell me, we share it, we dialogue, and you try it again the next semester, yeah. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for those tips.
Okay, no problem.
We did receive an anonymous question, and you actually touched upon it, which involved Twitter and how it can be used within the classroom and or the academic setting. So thank you for touching upon that.
Y'all can follow me. I'll put my
yes,
Twitter
yes.
up.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yes, let's do you want to put it? I mean, I can look it up and copy and paste, but I would have to look it up right now. Thank you. Oh, you're on mute, sorry.
I'm muted, I always do that. I forgot mentioning, so.
All I wanted was to
Oh,
see
Black, yes, here we go. Let me put that hashtag here.
I'm so sorry, I can't use.
Oh, thank you.
See, I can't use the internet.
Sorry. Thank you so much for posting. Yes, this is the Twitter hashtag. If there is anyone else who has any questions.
So I just sent a link, sorry.
Oh, okay.
So in Canada, most of us don't know, by most of us, most Canadians don't necessarily know like a timeline of Canadian history. So the Canadian government created these 30-second, 1-minute commercials about particular historical moments in Canadian history. So in the 21st century, you see more stories of non-white or marginalized people and communities and highlighting their contributions to Canada. So the one I posted, if I was to ever teach, I guess, activism or Canadian history, the story is about Viola Desmond, who was a part of the NAACP or similar things like that in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And she was arrested for sitting in the white section of a movie theater. So there was this protest and type of activism within the Black community to where she fought for the, desegregation. And this happened 10 years before Rosa Parks and the NAACP in Birmingham did the bus boycott. So I like using, this is a valid source. There are resources to teach these things in the classroom. So I like using these databases like the Library of Congress. I've even seen great projects through CUNY online. You know, I just try to use what I use myself and what students use in terms of communication and technology and integrate it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I mean, there's quite a lot that we did not discuss, like you know, the activism in Jamaican community in Crown Heights, the Dominican community in Washington Heights, and you know, it is past the hour. You know, you've been very generous with your time, so I do not want to.
We had too much fun.
Yes. Well, Professor Nelson Santana says you wish there were a second part to this. Dr. Gaynair, it's up to you whether or not you want.
I'm not doing anything. So I'm playing. I'm doing a lot of work, a lot of studying. I mean, yes, I would love to do part 2. Sorry.
No, definitely. The other thing is that I'm respectful of people and their scholarship, right? And so something that does happen at times is that a person may participate in a public engagement and share a particular research project that is not yet published. And sometimes someone catches wind of it, and you know, they'll publish something on that matter, and I'm very respectful of them. Do not want to sort of would never want to play a part in someone having their research, I guess, stolen or have someone else, you know. So we definitely, you know, I would like you to speak to our audience once you get some particular research projects that I know you're working on, and you know, and share it, because I know that these will make great interventions. There is some folks, we lived through some of these experiences and we know it, but you're also uncovering these amazing details, you know, as you're working with the archives, with archival material, the interviews that you're also conducting as well. And so, you know, I'm certain that once this information comes out, it's certainly going to change the landscape in that particular field.
You know, we can still have conversations, because no matter what, if I write it, it's gonna be my story. We can all write the same things, but you know what I'm saying? It's how I would interpret it that's gonna make it great.
Correct.
Well, I'm gonna toot my own horn, but you know what I'm saying? So it's all good.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. Do you want, are there any further questions? I do not see anything from the audience as of now.
Comments?
Yes, and I know that people have meetings and are running away to meetings, etc. Yes. So, Professor Andrews is thanking you for, you know, participating and being willing and to speak to our community at BCC. Thank you.
I'm so happy I was invited.
We're very happy to have you, and hopefully there will be a part 2. So
yeah, holla at me. I'm just gonna share my email address if anyone has comments or questions, and if there's a way I can follow up. I am here and available. I'm just honored to be here at Bronx Community College. Thank you so much, Professor Santana, for the invitation. And I hope everyone is doing well during these difficult times. I hope everyone and their loved ones are okay and in great health. And you know, we're doing what we can. Education knowledge is so powerful. Learning ways to discern foolishness from truth is very important these days. So yeah, we should all use our powers for good.
Totally agree with you, Dr. Gaynair. Thank you so much for that message.